Well met, my friends. As I mentioned in the campaign video, I'm going to be reading some chapters of the book, so I will start with chapter 1. Chapter 1. Smoke. Flames licked at him, singeing his hair, yet he smiled. Pharaoh Torridan had no illusion that he would live through this, but at least the fire would alert the others. The villager next to him pulled at Pharaoh's arm. He saw the terror in the peasant's eyes as the man faced Pharaoh to address him. "Sir Knight, we cannot stay here any longer. We must leave." Getting out of the burning house would be sensible, but outside the marauders waited. Still, going down fighting and perhaps buying the other villagers time to escape would be better than staying and suffocating in the smoke. However, they could not leave just yet. "Wait," Pharaoh said. He held back the men from unbolting the door. "We must save the children. They're trapped upstairs." Pharaoh looked at the stairs and saw that one of the flasks of flaming oil the bandits had thrown through the windows had landed on it. A wall of fire blocked the way. "I will get them. Guard the door and try to wait for us for as long as you can." The children did not belong to the men. He and Pharaoh fled into this house when the marauders stormed into the village. For that reason, the peasant did not argue when Pharaoh shouldered that burden. The man positioned himself at the door as Pharaoh rushed through the curtain of flames that blocked the way to the upper floor. By now, thick black smoke obscured his vision. The logical, detached part of his mind marveled at how much smoke one burning room generated and how fast it spread. Instinct urged Pharaoh to flee. Instead, he dashed forward, shielding his mouth with his sleeve, determined to find the children. A faint wailing noise originated from one of the rooms. Coughing, Pharaoh ran toward the noise. He did not stop to check whether the door was unlocked. Without wasting time, he kicked open the door. Inside, a young girl huddled a smaller child, probably her brother. The girl tried to comfort him as the boy cried, but they both fell silent when Pharaoh entered the room. "Come with me, we must leave immediately." The girl took her brother's hand and followed the knight back the way he came. Just as they reached the stairs, it collapsed with a loud thud. They pulled back as a waft of embers rose up. "Oh no," the girl said. "What do we do? We cannot get out." Pharaoh showed her a reassuring smile. "Follow me." They ran back to the children's room where Pharaoh opened the window. He paused for a moment to slip out of his chain shirt. Afterwards, he climbed out on the tiles of the roof. Behind him, the children followed his lead. With small, deliberate steps, the knight inched his way to the edge of the house, close to where the next building stood. He heard shouts from below, and despite his fear of heights, he risked a glance. On the street, the bandits had spotted him. They ran over to the side so that they stood in the gap between the two houses. To his relief, he saw that the villager downstairs took the opportunity to slip out of the house and run off. Some of the marauders shouted, but the red-haired fellow who seemed to be their leader kept them in line. Pharaoh had the impression that they were out to get him, as retribution for injuring one of their men when they first attacked the village. Looking down, he felt dizzy. Pharaoh pressed himself to the tiles of the roof, waiting for the queasy feeling to subside. The girl touched his arm. "Are you all right?" The question stirred him up and renewed his resolve. He could not fail these children. They continued toward the side of the roof, but before reaching it, the bandits started throwing more flasks of burning oil onto the roof. Amidst the screams of the boy, Pharaoh navigated between these walls of fire until they stood close to the edge. "We need to jump across to the other roof." "No, I can't," the boy said with a high-pitched voice. "You must," the girl said. She squeezed both shoulders of the child. "It's easy, you can do this, just watch me." With that, she ran down the slope of the roof, hurled herself across the distance and landed on the other house. For a moment it looked like the boy would snap out of his fright, but then he sank back. "I can't, I will fall." Pharaoh felt the house beneath him wobble as more and more of its support was consumed by the fire. "Staying here isn't safe either. Take my hand." Pharaoh grabbed the boy's wrist and ran down the roof with him. They both jumped, but mid-flight he knew that they would not make it. He couldn't tell what hurt more, crashing down onto the hard tiles of the roof or having the boy's weight pull at his arm. It seemed like a miracle that Pharaoh managed to hold on to the side of the roof with his left hand while not letting go of the child who dangled down on his right side. The kid's scream annoyed Pharaoh, but he conceded that in a way it was a good sign if the child was well enough to cry. Pharaoh tried to pull the boy up when the smirking bandits appeared underneath them. One of them waved to get Pharaoh's attention. The marauder took a bottle from his pack, no doubt another one of the incendiaries. "Hey, knight!" the man shouted. "Here's something to keep you warm!" At this range, they could not miss. Pharaoh strained himself to hoist the child onto the roof. The knight glanced back at the marauder, who stretched his arm back in preparation of the throw. However, the fiery death never came. Before the man could throw the flask, a roof tile hit him square in the face. The bottle of flaming oil slipped from the man's hand, splashing flames onto the street below as it shattered on the ground. The bandit danced around, trying to extinguish his clothes, which were ignited by the fire. Pharaoh turned as far as he could to look at the girl, who pried another tile out of the roof. "Thank you for saving our lives," he said. He managed to haul the boy up onto the edge of the roof. "Let's move while the bandits are distracted." The three of them climbed around on the roof until they reached a window. Pharaoh kicked the glass inward and helped the two children to enter the building. With the kids behind him, he made his way to the ground floor. The entrance door burst open just as he came down the stairs. In a fluid motion, Pharaoh drew his sword, whirling it around as he advanced on the bandits that tried to push through the opening. If he allowed them to get in, they would be able to surround him. He knew that if that would happen, they would eventually overpower him. Pharaoh danced forward, fending off the first bandit's attacks while stalling him with slashes of his own. The knight landed a blow on the man's wrist. The marauder cried out. His weapon fell from his limp hand. When the marauder retreated, another filled the gap. No more than one attacker could stand in the narrow entrance, so Pharaoh felt comfortable that he could defend his position. "You fools," the red-haired man said. "Leave the knight be. Uluf will be here soon enough. He'll personally want to smash the knight, but if we haven't gathered all the valuables by then, we'll be in deep trouble." "Jaren, wait," one of the marauders said. "If we don't kill the knight, he'll interfere." "He's already a nuisance," Jaren said. "But I see your point. You two," he pointed at a pair of his goons. "Keep him cooped up in there." The remaining bandits started to run toward the other houses in the village. The two goons tasked with containing Pharaoh withdrew, so he would have to be the one stuck in the doorway if he wanted to engage them. Through the door he glared at Jaren. "You won't get away with this! Justice will be served, mark my words!" The red-haired man sneered. "You're delusional! Soon the boss Big Uluf will come to crack your pathetic skull!" Pharaoh ground his teeth, feeling helpless as he watched the marauders ransack the other buildings. Without taking his eyes from the door, he talked to the children. "Go upstairs and barricade yourself in one of the rooms." "What are you going to do?" the girl asked. Pharaoh inhaled. Fighting meant certain death, but he could not sit by and violate his oath to protect the people. "I am going to arrest these bandits." He did not wait for a reply. Instead, equally charged up by rage and desperation, he rushed one of the marauders. The man backed away, surprised by the ferocious strike. Pharaoh spun around and slashed his sword in an arc, causing the other thug to abandon his attack and leap away to safety. Pharaoh stood in the clear, the house and the two bandits in front of him. The two bandits eyed him warily. Due to their hesitation to engage, the knight realized he had a good chance of coming out of this unscathed. However, the spark of hope was smothered when he noticed a 9-foot-tall man tromping toward him. No, that thing wasn't human. It was one of those ogres, a humanoid creature that consisted in equal parts of muscle and fat. Pointed teeth like tusks grew from the ogre's jaw. The creature dragged a short, uprooted tree behind him. Jaren pointed at Pharaoh while whispering into the ogre's ear when he was hunched over to listen. The bandits waited while the ogre took a step forward. "You!" He shook his fist at Pharaoh. "Jaren say you make trouble. I, Uluf, will smash you. Come fight me." "You want to duel me?" Pharaoh asked. He never heard of ogres honoring the traditions of the knighthood. The notion seemed preposterous. Still, if this provided a chance to end this without further endangering the villagers, he had to take it. Very well. Promise me that your men will leave if I defeat you, and I'll gladly face you. Jaren piped up at that suggestion. Don't do it, boss! You can fight him even without agreeing to his terms! Uluf shoved Jaren out of his way. Bah, you too scared! I can promise anything, 'cause I never lose. So you agree in front of your men that if I win, your people will leave without causing further trouble? Pharaoh asked. Agree, the ogre said. Pharaoh looked at the tree that Uluf used as a makeshift club. One swipe could probably knock Pharaoh out. He gulped, but stepped forward regardless. You got it, ugly. Come get me. The ogre bared his teeth. You die now, little man. The knight stepped around the ogre, desperate to stay clear of his reach. Every once in a while, Pharaoh jabbed at the ogre, but on the few occasions his blade connected, it did not even pierce the creature's leathery skin. Pharaoh contemplated his options, which did not look too bright. If he stayed to fight, fatigue would eventually get to him. After all, the ogre needed just one good blow and Pharaoh would be down and out. If he ran, the villagers were at the mercy of the bandits. After the trouble he gave them, Pharaoh worried that they would take out their frustration on the people living here. Besides, he agreed to duel the ogre, which meant that his honor demanded he couldn't run. The knight and the ogre circled each other, testing their respective defenses. This went on for a while, until Pharaoh noticed that his movements slowed down. At the same time, he heard galloping horses in the distance, which hopefully meant that he needed to hold out just a little longer until the knights arrived. As he caught a glimpse of approaching horses on the other side of the village, the ogre's club came down on him. The trunk did not hit him, but the branches and leaves grazed him. Pharaoh lost his balance and fell to the ground. The ogre lifted his club, towering over Pharaoh. There was an alternative to winning to end this duel. He tossed his blade to the side. I give up, you win. The ogre looked confused. No, we fight. You die. But I already yielded, Pharaoh said. He stood up and dusted off his clothes. Then he extended a hand at the ogre. You won, fair and square. I surrender. There is no need for violence. The ogre looked at him stupefied. No, no, you fight. Behind the ogre, the bandits ran around, trying to escape the dozen knights that rode into the village. Pharaoh couldn't help but laugh. His whole body quivered at the release of tension. The ogre growled, What's so funny, human? Well, Pharaoh said, turn around and have a look, Uluf. Uluf began turning, then spun back in mid-rotation. Old trick! You no trick me! Pharaoh laughed even harder. Suit yourself, but you're missing all the fun. When Pharaoh stepped past the ogre, the creature had no other option but to turn if he wanted to keep watching the knight. By now, the knights had rounded up the marauders. Half a dozen knights circled the ogre. One of the knights made the horse rear. The hoofs crashed into the ogre's chest, knocking him off balance. The other knights dismounted. They swarmed the creature, hitting him with their hammers. The rider approached Pharaoh and dismounted. When the knight took off her helmet, long blonde hair cascaded onto her shoulders. Pharaoh Torridan, good to see you again. Pharaoh felt his face light up. He crushed his friend into a hug. Jarina, what are you doing here? She smiled at him when he released her. Ah, well, I guess I fell out of favor with Sir Gunther. Sorry to hear that, Pharaoh said. Jarina looked at the subdued ogre and the bandits. What are we going to do with them? Pharaoh shrugged. Our duty is done. We'll transfer them to the Evernight exile and let them deal with these criminals. He only had an inkling of what happened there. It was one more aspect he did not like about his work, but that couldn't be helped. Come on, Jarina, he said. Let's get back to Mountain Watch. Right, so that was chapter 1.